So, are you still thinking about moving to Burlington, Ontario? In this video, 8 reasons why Burlington might not be for you. This is something that you might find on Google, like a bit information, but what I'm gonna tell you is our experience here. It's a life experience that you cannot really get from reviews or if you just search. So if you're ready to buckle up, I have my 8 reasons here, and if you stick till the end, you're gonna see if this is a place for you or not. I'm Milena and I'm a local real estate agent in Burlington. We get calls every day from people just like you who need more information, who need help, who need some guidance. So it doesn't matter if you're moving in a week or a month or a year, feel free to reach out. Our contact information is in the description box below. We will be very happy to guide you and make that smooth transition towards moving to Burlington. Now let's dive into Burlington. While Burlington is a great place to live, believe me, it's fantastic, it might not be a good fit for everyone. So I'm gonna give you the 8 reasons I found that you might consider other options after you hear me out. Now I'm gonna discuss with you the first reason why Burlington might not be for you. First of all, Burlington is one of the most expensive cities in the GTA area after Toronto and Oakville. So cost of living here is high, just to start with that. You consider property taxes, which actually they benefit the school system, but you know, they're higher. But at least you don't have to send your kid to a private school unless you really want to. And you have high prices, high housing prices. So I'm going to break this down for you. For example, if you're buying, if you're a tenant, or whatever you're planning to do when you move here. First, if you buy a house, we're gonna start with that. There is the tax that I have not seen in Europe, in the countries that I live in, or in the United States. It's called land transfer tax. This is for all Canada besides 2 provinces, Saskatchewan and Alberta. Alberta is known with low taxes, but this is just bits of information. We're gonna focus on Ontario because Burlington is in Ontario and we live here. So the land transfer tax is broken down like that. The first 55,000 are taxed 0.5%. As we go up in the price, the brackets are 55,000 to 250,000 and more, and it's up to 2 million, it will be 2%. Then in 2017, there was a new legislation approved that houses above 2 million will pay land transfer tax 2.5%. But basically, you know, as I said, everything is calculated in those brackets. Also, besides the property tax, the land transfer tax, you have all the fees that are associated with buying a house, like title insurance, lawyer fees, title search, and all that. So let's say your house is $1 million, then you need to prepare 20% down payment, which is 200,000. Then you have the land transfer tax and all the other fees associated. So let's say a round number of 250,000 you have to have up front. Plus, you need to be a qualified buyer, which an agent, a real estate agent or an agency helps you with all the steps. We have all the plans and how to be more appealing to the market. So we work with all that. But just make sure, you know, that you understand that there is a lot of cash involved up front. So let's say you decide to be a tenant, not a home buyer. There are key ingredients here too. For instance, in Ontario, the landlords are not protected by the legislation, which makes it super difficult on a tenant and increases the rent much higher than it should be. But this is because, you know, the landlords need to protect their properties. They need to know who lives in their house, how they're gonna pay and all those things. If you're a landlord, you will know what are the steps. So let's say you don't have a credit, you have very bad credit, or you're moving from another country. You need to build amazing portfolio. We moved from the States, so we were not really expecting what is happening. We moved during the pandemic. There was not just a bidding war on buying houses, there was a bidding war on rent. So the rents were even higher than usual. So we need to make things more interesting for the landlord. We wrote letter why we're moving from the States to Canada, what my husband will work, what I'm gonna be working, pictures of all of us, all kind of things that the agent helped us do. So now I even know better what I need to do in order to help people who are relocating. And then the landlords are requiring deposit rent, which is first month rent regular deposit in the United States, then first month rent, and then deposit for the keys. So you need to come up with a couple of thousand up front. If you have your salary set, you need to calculate the 12 months rent plus utilities plus any supplies that you need in order to know how much you're gonna need to live in Ontario per month. Then the other thing is actually the utilities here are higher. We have something that calls carbon tax and increase a lot the gas, which actually in the States, if I compare it, the gas is very cheap and people pay minimum to warm up their houses. Here instead, it's much higher since it was approved and now the government is charging for it. So just be prepared for that. Another thing that you need to know about moving here is the water heaters are actually rented. So this is on the top of the rent that you pay or on the top of the mortgage, like it's part of your utility bill. So like other places, you buy your own water heater and this is it until it gets broken or you need to replace it or you need to repair it. No, here you have a monthly rent of the water heater. So as you see, the bills are piling up and that makes Burlington and the GTA area much harder to afford. Now let's move on to reason number 2 why Burlington might not be for you. I mentioned on another video that Burlington is in the middle between Toronto and Niagara Falls. So in ideal conditions, traffic conditions, it will take about an hour to go to Toronto and about an hour to go to Niagara Falls, which is not bad at all. But this is without much traffic. So let's put rush hour traffic in the morning, rush hour traffic in the evening, and if you have to be at the office at around 8 o'clock, you might have to leave around 6:30. So that's gonna impact your working day, like you might not be home for 12 hours or it just depends on which side of Toronto you are, but still that's the average. So the very exciting news, in 2026, FIFA is hosting World Cup in North America and Toronto is one of the cities that is hosting it, and we're gonna have a couple of games here. So this is all great, but it impacts the traffic. In terms of now in the city, they're building new infrastructure to facilitate all the games and the new visitors. So there is a main highway, which actually it's been working for the last 3 years on, and now the lanes in some areas are like one way only from the highway. So imagine how congested it gets. People are actually considering quitting jobs. It's that bad because it might take even 3 hours to go to Toronto, and it's gonna still be lasting probably until 26 until everything is finalized. So we're looking at years of construction on the roads going towards Toronto. On the way back, it's not that bad, but on the way to Toronto from Burlington and the areas that are south and east, that's what is happening. The congestion is terrible. And that's like there's the highway that it's a paid highway, it calls 407, that a lot of people now are considering taking because it does go in the surrounding areas, but because it's paid, not many cars are there, so the flow is very fast. But once you get off of that paid highway, you jump immediately into the hard traffic. So just to give you an example, yesterday I had to go to Toronto, like a little bit past downtown, It should take me an hour in ideal traffic. Let's say an hour and a half the worst. It took me 2.5 hours one way. And that was not even in rush hour. I left at 8:30. So when the cars were not that much. Just do consideration if it's worth for you to do the drive, or maybe like live closer to Toronto where the prices are higher, how that's gonna play out. Of course, you know, a small city has its own benefits, big city too. So we're gonna go small city versus big city benefits as well. But I'm telling you about traffic congestion, that's how it works. Now, since we were talking about congestion and traffic, I will follow up as the reason number 3 to be public transportation. It's not that great in Burlington. It's not like Toronto. Toronto is really advanced. Here we do have public transportation. It's just not everywhere. Also, the main route to use public transportation from Burlington to Toronto is the GO train. So that is really a peace of mind. If you take the train, it takes about an hour or a little bit less, it just depends, but relatively an hour. But the train is not cheap. So I did a lot of research on passes and monthly passes and weekly, and there's no much that can help working people unless their company is providing support towards using the GO train. Let's say you want to do a round trip to Toronto during working week. It's gonna be $12 one way. So this is $24 round trip. If you're to park in Toronto, you can find a parking of about $40, sometimes even $30 in downtown. So if you're thinking about saving on parking and doing the round trip, it's pretty much the same. Just, you know, when you add up the gas, it just breaks even. So public transportation, it's not a relief in terms of saving you money to go to Toronto. It is a relief in terms of time, because now since the congestion is so heavy, the train is a very good alternative. Instead of staying in the traffic for 2 hours, you can be there in 1 hour. But money-wise, it's not. So if your company provides some kind of support, that's really helpful. If it's not providing any support, it's just up to you to navigate that. They do have different passes. It's not a high variety, but let's say there is a pass for $10 on weekends and holidays, and it's unlimited trips. So that's awesome. You know, if you want to go on a Saturday to Toronto, zoom around, look at the parks or museums and come back, $10. That's very reasonable, right? And you also can go all the way to Niagara, not just to Toronto, like that train goes all the way down. Also, if you're considering kids, the good news is kids under 12 are free on the GO train. And that's one benefit of it. So the most people are using the GO train is to go to work. And that's very understanding, especially now, since what we are expecting with more road construction will happen in the next years until the World Cup comes here. So, you know, we are looking at a substantial amount of time to navigate with traffic and see how we're gonna do our work, if they're gonna give us more hybrid or more work at home positions, or they will insist on bringing us to the office. You have to negotiate that up front if you're gonna live in the suburbs and commute to Toronto. My topic number 4, why Burlington might not be for you, and this is the climate. Our experience as a family, we mostly lived in the southern states and also west coast, but south, when I'm talking like south, only south. We only went to North Carolina or Colorado, or when we were in California in the mountains, just for the fun to see snow or to ski, but that was it. And then we were going back to the south where the weather is nice and warm. So for us, 20 years of no winter and suddenly moving to Canada with a long winter was a huge shock. So be prepared for that if you're coming from the south. The winter starts around November and it can last until the end of April, sometimes even May. The first year when we moved here, the winter was kind of harsh. We did have a lot of snow. It was beautiful and white for a while. And then unfortunately that period with the white snow doesn't last much longer. Most of it is just brownish and foggish days. And honestly, the first year was so unpleasant. The cold weather ended around the middle of June. So it's not like every year the same, like you guys know, everywhere is the weather is changing. Like for instance, this year the winter was very mild. We barely broke the 0 degrees Celsius. So of course the winter was minus in Celsius, but not as bad as the first 2 years. Unfortunately though, when the winter is so warm here, it's foggy most of the time. The days start like around 9 o'clock and around 3 o'clock starts to get dark if it's foggy and gray. So we have very short day, which is pretty depressing after, coming from the sun and, the fun activities at the beach. So the days are short. When you have to drive for work, you most of the time drive in dark. But that's just, as I said, the winter season. Then the days start getting longer around the end of March, and they're really getting long. So in the summer we could have light until 10 o'clock, and that's the nice part of it. Unfortunately, the summer is short. So let's say winter is minimum 6 months. Then we have short spring, we have short fall, and relatively short summer. So be prepared for that. You have to have the right gear. For winter, you can't just go with regular boots. You have to have waterproof boots and waterproof shoes. The ground is cold, most of the time is wet. So you have to protect yourself. Winter gear is not cheap. So be ready to spend some money on clothing, jackets. We probably have like 30 jackets already for all kind of weather change. A lot of shoes like fall shoes, winter shoes, spring shoes, tennis shoes. It's just, you really have to do a budget actually on your spending of the clothing here. If you're coming from somewhere north, you know how it is. Here in Canada, winter gear is very expensive. That also brings me back to the lifestyle. Since winter is so long, the gas bill will be also expensive for at least 6 months, so keep that in mind. And the other thing about the carbon tax, we have increased also in the gas prices when you drive. Just a quick positive note within the climate, that a lot of families during those long winter months take a week or two of vacation to go to Cuba, Dominican Republic, or Mexico. From Hamilton or other regional airports, there are a lot of cheap flights that can take you there, even Florida. So, there is a light in the tunnel, and then, this way you make the winter more bearable. Reason number 5 is the job market. So this is the tough call, because the city is beautiful and very safe, but your job may not support your lifestyle. So Burlington does have a diverse economy. We have manufacturing, IT, warehousing. A lot of things are building up. The city is expanding, but we're talking about 200,000 residents, which puts limitation on the employment. So if, for instance, you want to advance in your job, most probably from Burlington you need to start working at Toronto, because in Toronto, the possibilities are endless. There are tons of companies that the headquarters are there. Also, there are a lot of mining companies in Canada. That's a huge business in Canada. All the headquarters are actually situated in Toronto and Mississauga area, and that's where the big paying jobs are. So here you can find few, but also if you don't know somebody who can put your foot at the door, that's an issue. And you really need to network really hard to bring yourself to the position that you might make a good living in Burlington. It is possible, for sure. There are a lot of companies that pay well. I have a couple of in mind, but I'm not going to disclose them to you. But in general, the big job market is Toronto. Number 6, entertainment. Well, as I said, Burlington is fairly small, about 200,000 people, so you can expect big entertainment here. If I start with restaurants, during the week they close around 9 o'clock. If you go at 8:30, there is a high chance of possibility that you're gonna be turned back. So don't be surprised. Also, we have a lot of culture here, but it's not as diverse as the big city. So let's say you want to try your own authentic food, you might not find it here, but there is Indian, Lebanese, Greek food, sushi, Japanese food. So we do have bits of entertainment and they're pretty good, but definitely not a big city life. That brings me to the next, that also if you want to see a concert or a musical, or I don't know, maybe like a football game, you have to drive either to Toronto. The other opportunity is Hamilton, much more limited, but they do have events there as well. So it is a driving to see events. Sometimes it's painful because going to Toronto during an event, it could be 2 to 3 hours one way. A lot of people take the train, as I mentioned before. So you just need to pick up what really works for you and do it. But if you're expecting huge events here in Burlington, that's really not happening. It's very quiet city. Number 7, diversity. Burlington is 200,000 people and it starts getting bigger after the pandemic, actually during the pandemic, when people from Toronto start moving to the southern suburbs and north where it's cheaper. So we can see more mix, which that brings more exposure to different cultures. Like that's why we have more new restaurants popping in the city, and we are finding more foreign items in the grocery stores, and that's pretty impressive. So for instance, in Quebec, the French food is enhanced. Well, now when I want to eat snails, I can actually go to the grocery store and they sell frozen snails, and we can do it with butter just like the French do. Maybe it's not as exquisite, but pretty close. We do have authentic ones as well, that they're strictly like, say, Korean authentic grocery store that has only Korean items. It's really nice. The prices are a little higher, but you buy from the source. So we start getting that influence here as well. But in general, if you really look for diversity, Burlington is not to that point. And the last reason that Burlington might not be for you is limited higher education. So here high school is until 12th grade. There is an option of 13th grade. So a long time ago, the Canadian education was all the way up to 13th grade, which people here found beneficial because they find more maturity at one point, so they were more prepared for life. That was discontinued, and now we see that high school education is until 12th grade. There is a possibility, if you want your child to stay one more year and get more credits towards university or college, they can do a 13th year of school. That's totally acceptable. And also, I've met families that they felt that 13th year really benefited their children. So keep that in mind. There's nothing embarrassing about going for 13 year of school. Some kids take a year off, as we know, until they decide what they want to do. This is just an option. But in terms of higher education, you do have to go to another city. There are a couple of places in the surrounding suburbs that they actually have universities. Of course, Toronto has one of the best universities in Canada. We know about that. So you need to think about the housing market again here. If your child is not going to commute but live in Toronto or live in Guelph, Guelph has a huge university, really impressive grounds. I have to say it's worth to visit. Hamilton, which is 20 minutes away, also has university. So there are options that you can commute to the university, but also if you want your kids to learn how to survive on their own, it's better, of course, if they live outside of home. That's just how people break down their budgets and see what fits better. But if you're counting to have continue high education here in Burlington, that's very limited. So that's it for now. I hope I'm gonna see you at the next video.